We
Hello,
are live.
hello. Yes, we are
Hello.
live. We are here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So, hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen, PMO fans, leaders, practitioners, whoever is with us now. It's our pleasure to have the next session, the consequent session about the project management office world, and we are very happy to see all you here. My name is David Iskandarian. I'm a practitioner in project management, and together with my friend, with my great colleague Ilinka, we actually uh, conduct these sessions about the project management offices, and now our guest is Hussain Bandukwala, who is a great practitioner, having a huge experience in setting up PMOs. And while reading his bio, I would become very impressed that he had just some great impact on the project management offices in different organizations by making the time spent on the project management and the project management practices uh, faster, more efficient. The efficiency was increased as well. So it's my pleasure to share the micro with our great friend Hussein, and you're welcome. And please tell something uh, about your experience, about your attitude to the project management office, and I will ask a lot of questions to you. I promise. Thank you.
Absolutely. David, thank you for that. And Alinka, thank you so much for and all the good folks at Books and Beyond. Appreciate you guys having me over. It's wonderful to be on this session and talk about my favorite subject, PMOs. With PMO setups, etc., there's just so many things that we can talk about. But specifically, when it comes to setting up a PMO, the one thing that I do want to get the conversation going is, and let me ask everyone this. Let me ask you, Alinka. Let me ask David. Let me ask the people who have joined the call, maybe in the chat. What do you think is the core ingredient to make the any PMO setup successful? One ingredient that is essential to have a successful PMO setup. Any guesses?
Okay, I put it in. So
Put it
Hussein,
in.
my take would be there are probably more, but my take would be just communication, effective communication.
Yep, that's part of it. So let
David,
me
what
go
do you
ahead
think?
and David, what are your thoughts on that?
Uh, it's to me
One
the
core
most
ingredient,
important
David, the
ingredient.
first thing that comes to your mind.
Salt.
One
Integration,
thing,
integration,
integration. Okay.
right?
So the response, in my humble opinion, the right response, in my humble opinion, is change management. Without change management, your PMO will fail. Why is that? Because ultimately, PMOs have a bad rep around policing organizations, about slowing things down, about becoming very, very dinosaurish and heavy, about being very bureaucratic. And so when it comes down to any PMOs, some folks within the organization are already apprehensive. They're already scared about some of these things coming true and actually impacting them negatively. So when we're looking at a successful PMO setup, the first thing we need to address is what's in it for me. All the core stakeholders for any organization, for your PMO, need to know what's in it for me if the PMO happens. For some people, it might be transparency. For some people, it might be consistency. For some people, it might be let's just get things done. For some people, it might be don't bother me. Just tell me when things are gonna get. Just tell me when things are up, or just bother me when you need something from me. whatever it is, we need to have change management in place before we get everything thought about. And the way we set up the PMO, the way I generally teach PMOs, I know we're going to talk about my course, setting up a PMO on LinkedIn Learning. The whole process and the approach that's in there is hinged on the tenets of change management, which is essentially informing, educating, engaging, and getting people's feedback along the way. So by the time we're done with the PMO, it's not like whether Hussein is setting up a PMO and he's asking, stakeholders to do something. It's not like a Link or David have set up a PMO and the organization has to just do what they say. No, it's because they feel that they're now actually their skins in the game. They're bought in, and in fact, some of them might even think that Linka and Hussein and David are setting up their PMO based on their own ideas. So they're super happy. We're super happy. Organization gets what it needs. The PMO, the foundation of the PMO setup is successful there.
Hussein, if I may ask,
So
sorry, David. Go ahead. You had something in mind. Go ahead. When
I
do
was
you?
I was going actually to ask about the, how to say, the competition between the project management and project management office, because actually I started my career from project management, and then eventually I understood that project management office and PMO leadership is something heavier compared to the project management. Do I have right feelings?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like think of it in this way: whether you have the VP of accounting having a tiff with the financial analyst, or the VP of
Mm,
IT competing for the position with his coder or infrastructure analyst. That's really the level, right? The when we talk about PMOs, there are lots of definitions that are floating around. To me, it's really very simple, right? Just the way you have an IT department that takes care of all things IT, just the way you have an accounting department that takes care of all things accounting, just the way you have an HR department that takes care of all HR, you have a PMO that is either a role or a function or a department within an organization that takes care of all things around project management, whether it's project management standards, whether it's project management governance, whether it's project management execution, whether it's project management strategy, whether there's a structure around people, process, tools around it, whether it's the different disciplines of managing the schedules or managing the budgets, etc., etc. That's all within the periphery of the PMO. And so managing project managers are just operating at the project level. The PMOs are essentially focusing on either the accountability or the responsibility of the project delivery, right? If if the project managers are directly reporting into the PMO, then they have direct accountability. Even if they have if they have indirect reporting to the PMO, they still have project management delivery accountability, right? But that's just not for one project. It's for all projects that are happening within the organization, or all projects that are happening within a certain region, or all projects that are happening within a certain department,
mm,
depending on the scope of the PMO, right? So absolutely, project management and PMO leadership, two different things. One of the biggest things that people ask me and tell me, hey, Hussein, um, I've had 20 years of managing projects, 20 years of experience in project management. Will I be a great PMO leader? The next
mm.
question I ask them, how many PMOs actually have you actually set up or led? And they say zero. And I'll say, well, I don't know. Similarly, I have worked with and coached PMO leaders who have had no formal project management experience and no formal project management training or background. And yet they have become phenomenal PMO leaders. They've set PMOs that have been successful in their organizations. They have boosted their career trajectory because after being successful PMO leaders, they were projected on to executive level leadership roles within their organizations. Right. So if you are shooting for a PMO leadership role, yes, you will certainly have certain transferable skills from project management. And if you have so much of project management experience, certainly great. But it's definitely not is automatically translating great PMs being great PMO leaders. Similarly, I would ask you, would a great financial analyst be a great VP of finance? Would a great coder be a great VP of IT? Will a great accounting be a great CFO?
Hmm.
You would probably not have a definitive answer because you know that there are so many different aspects to leading a business unit because there's a lot of people functions, people roles, responsibilities that come part of it, which they may have, they may not have, right? So that is key.
Thank you.
What were the traits, Hussein, for all those great PMO leaders that you were working with no previous management experience? What did you notice any particular common skills or qualities that they had?
Absolutely. So there are generally about 35 attributes that I think a PMO leader should have. Not all PMO leaders have all those 35 attributes. I have a little framework around it, all of it as well, and that it can be a very long-winded answer. But to really answer you very directly, Linka, the core trait that I see for there are two core traits that I see within PMO leaders who don't have prior project management experience, who can be phenomenal. PMO leaders. Number one is they know how to get things done. So sure, they may not have prior project management experience, either formally but in their capacity previously in their previous lives, such as being a strategy consultant, or being a BA, or being someone from the operations team, or being an engineering leader, or being a marketing guru, whatever it is, they were able to get things done
Mhm.
no matter what the situation was. And that
Mm.
was a major contributor to the success. The other thing that I generally think, and I'm going to totally blanket this one, is that they need to have absolutely wonderful people skills. Now, within people skills, you have influencing, you have negotiating, you have communicating, you have facilitating, you have presenting, all those, all those areas. But to me, when a PMO leader, especially when someone is coming from outside of the organization and they need to really make a mark, the currency that the PMO leaders need to think about as operating with is credibility. That is the currency that they have. They earn it, they lose it. They use it, they use it well, the credibility grows. They don't invest it well, it sinks. Right? So to answer your question, Linka, essentially getting it done
Mhm.
and earning and growing credibility very quickly.
Thank you. And a question from my side, if I may. My question is about how the organizations actually grow to somehow some level of maturity to understand or to understand the need that they have a need specific need in PMO establishment.
So, when we're looking at the setup of a PMO, I know there are many different like maturity models out there. There are also like various definitions of PMOs, such as being supportive and being directive and all those good things. The fundamental focus that I really think about and approach PMO setup is with um, what are the project management challenges that are being faced within the organization, and what are the root causes of those project management challenges. And essentially, as a PMO leader, when we are holistically figuring this out for the organization or whatever the scope of work is, it really is to understand how will I solve for those root causes. What are my recommendations going to be for that, right? And the majority of the PMO leaders that I generally end up working with, whether it's either setting up a PMO, whether it's optimizing a PMO, whether it's resurrecting a previously created but shut down PMO, uh, the we are looking at situations at, you know, scaling organizations, private equity backed companies, Fortune 500 companies, global brands, all are essentially struggling with the foundational fundamental elements. So you really need to sort of scrape and go back, right? And do these things. But then again, when it comes down to the maturity aspect, I essentially categorize PMOs in three distinct buckets. Either you're nascent, or you're established, or you're optimized. Okay. And the way that we have set this up, the way that I have set this model up is that I think of it as not that the entire PMO is nascent or established or optimized, but what functions and what project management disciplines and what structural elements, which are the people process tools, are nascent, which ones are established, which ones might are optimized. So for instance, you might go into an organization and you might realize that they're really good at building schedules, but they're terrible at managing budgets, or they are really good at planning, but they're terrible at execution. And the reason for that is because, yes, they're really good at building schedules, but they're really poor at managing scope, right? So we have to go down to that level to understand, okay, what is the maturity of the organization for that minute nucleus atomic sized component, and tackle those components accordingly and have relevant recommendations accordingly, right? So that is the way that I approach the maturity of and then the optimization of the PMO.
What do they typically do, Hussein, in these cases where you? I'm assuming in your practice you address these gaps, right? And you make recommendations. Do the organizations typically prefer to train individuals or hire and address those gaps? What do you see most commonly happening?
I think that it's really a mix and the situation, right? So where in budding PMOs that have never been set up and they need to be set up, generally I see that the PMO leader takes the initial lead in terms of actually living those recommendations, and
Hmm.
then 3, 4, 6 months down the line they start building a team, right? In
Right.
organizations where you have resurrecting PMOs, you already have PMs there, right? So it's really a matter of realigning the PMs. So they're not hiring for more, but they're essentially shepherding the PMs and the project and the program managers and the portfolio managers, and really realigning them towards the new perspective of the way the projects should be managed. And then when it comes down to organizations that are growing really, really fast,
Hmm.
and they need, they again have a lot of PMs. And so, again, over there, the situation is that you will have, really, really solid PMs, and you will have some PMs who are really junior,
Hmm.
right? And so then they're looking at multiple aspects of, maybe creating some sort of a mentorship or a buddy system. Maybe they're including some levels of training to go ahead and elevate the level of project management for the junior PMs, and they're focusing on learning development paths, focusing on career development paths for not only having a way for the junior PMs to get up, but also have some level of motivation, inspiration, and incentives for them to also succeed in the space.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, thank you. And Let us imagine the situation when three of us are making a new company, just starting from scratch. But we know that PMO is important. What is your advice uh, as an expert from this domain? Is the first activities we need to consider with PMO? So my question is about: is it right to start or to think about establishing PMO in parallel with company establishment, or we need to launch the company, then time to think about the establishing PMO?
Yeah, that's a great
Are they
question,
twins
David.
or
Sorry, David, go ahead, finish up, finish it. I thought you were done.
my
Okay,
question was
I
that
think I got
to
your
start
question.
in parallel or just
Yeah. So the way I see look at PMOs is not a function of a company's revenue or investment or vision or whatever. I literally see a PMO as a function of the headcount within an organization. Okay. And any company that is about, maybe 50 or less, or maybe around 30, but growing quickly, should start thinking about a PMO. By the time they're at 100 and they don't have a PMO, they'll start seeing the pains. By the time they hit around 500 people, things will start crumpling down. They're going to get in their own way of growth, right? And so that is really the level and the sort of birth of a PMO within an organization. If anyone within an organization, if any company comes to me and says, "And you know what, we're a small business, we're like 10 people, we're 3 people." In your example, I would say you don't need a PMO. You need to do two things: either you hire a project manager, which you probably don't have the money for. So what you need to do is you need to learn project management, right? And one of the things that I'm also seeing in the startup space, David, is that especially in the tech startup space, is that you have product management, which is largely prevalent. And when the product management is happening there, they think that they actually don't need project management, which is something that is a total myth, right? Because the life of a company, if it is a product based company, it still is beyond the product.
Hmm. Yeah.
The company, the product is a subset of the company, not the other way around. And so there are many things that are happening within the product, and there are many things that are happening outside of the product. And in both cases, project management is essential for the success of any company. The way think of it is that product management and project management need to operate like they're in a happy marriage for a company to really thrive, right? So to literally answer your question, David, if it's just me, you, and Elenka setting up a company, you don't need a PMO. Don't even think about it, right? Don't even think about hiring a project manager. Just
unless we grow?
just
Yes.
learn, just learn
Yeah.
and or
Come back
hustle
to
your way through, right?
So
By
we
the
know.
time our company grows to 50 or 30, that's
Mm,
when we start thinking about the PMO.
all
You
approved.
know,
Thank you.
yeah.
So, Hussein, tell us a bit about the going to your courses as well, so we don't miss the chance to talk about them. You put together a great, I mean, more courses, but one of them in particular, setting up the PMO in the LinkedIn platform. What was the, I guess, what was the, first of all, what was the trigger of putting that course together, and how did the experience went?
Okay. Well, thanks for asking that question, Linka. I mean, that was something that had been on my mind for some time, and something that I was thinking of, to be honest, creating on my own platform. But really, LinkedIn Learning saw a few of my videos somewhere, I think, and they approached me whether I would like to create a video, sorry, a course with them. And so really that's what happened. And LinkedIn Learning, previously that company was called lynda.com. LinkedIn bought it, renamed it to LinkedIn Learning. They have fantastic studios in in a city in California called Carpinteria, which is in the LA area or close to Santa Barbara, and those studios are just state of the art. And from the time we signed up for signed up for the course, all the way to the delivery was a rock star experience. I mean, they have world class people. I had a producer with me who sort of helped me with making sure that the course came out in a way that was very conversational, not very academic, not very theoretical. It was just like the three of us having a conversation right now, or if we're meeting in a coffee shop, and I'm sort of explaining to you what's the first step, what's the second step, what's the third step, and rolling out the PMO accordingly, right? That's the nature of that. And then once took us some time to go ahead and get the script done. We did the script offline, remotely rather virtually, and then they flew me into their studios, um, and we recorded it 5 days straight. After which we had about 3 months of post production work, and then they launched it finally. Um, but they've done a fantastic job in really packaging it up. I do think that um, they're just a world class team, and some of those people who work there, whether they're directors, whether they're on the support staff, whether in the post production team, are actually former Hollywood associates. So they're really A class players, and it's just a fantastic experience. And when you go there, they actually make you, or at least I felt that way, they make you treat like a star, right? So I had a great time. In fact, very fun. I had like someone iron my shirt for me. Someone do my makeup and make my hair. In fact, my hairdresser, she told me she actually did hair for Kevin Costner once, and I was like, oh my god, are you serious? So yeah, me and Kevin Costner have something in common now. So that's right. But yeah, it was
Well,
a fantastic experience, and I think they were in term the biggest thing, the way we want to really think about that course. The very first thing we had to do was figure out the outline, right? Think of it as like a table of contents for any book or any report, or right. What will that look like? And then once we had that nailed, then things started flowing a lot, and it really took a while for me to get into the rhythm of it, because essentially every video had to be within 3 to 5 minutes. It couldn't be more than that, right? And within that, I had to start it off in a punchy way. I had to finish it off in a punchy way. I had to pepper it with real life examples, my
mhm.
own experiences or my clients' experiences, something that people looking and seeing the videos can really relate to. But more importantly, after they're done, they can actually start implementing some of those things. And therefore, along with the course, you also have some exercise files that you can download and actually work with while you are setting up your PMO.
Yeah, and I bet I did see your your setting of the PMO course, and I noticed that each video you basically have to have that kind of like energy, the same, keep the same energy level that that the other one, that the previous video and the next video. And it looks like it's an uninterrupted chain of videos, but they're actually broken down to pieces. And I'm assuming that you filmed them separately, right? They
Yeah,
weren't filmed in a bunch and then just cut, edited at different time
that's
points.
correct. Each one was filmed separately.
Yeah.
Each one was filmed separately, and we shot it in 5 days. I think we scheduled for 5 days. We finished in about 4.5 days. But yeah,
Mhm.
and that course is slightly in the anomaly, because generally LinkedIn learning courses are uh, 1 hour long, but that course, my course setting up a PMO, is 2 hours long. And one of the things that we actually were thinking about was, should we actually do this in as two courses and break it up as part one, part two, and release them accordingly? But after a lot of discussion, we realized it wouldn't make sense. I mean, for people, for the learners to really get the value out of it, it really needs to be delivered in one go. It has to be one course.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's a
before I will attend your LinkedIn course, I would like to take the chance to get some secrets and hints, tips, how to approach a company, how to identify a need from a site. As I know, you're the founder and CEO of Parvas Consulting Company, which is delivering PMO setting up services, PMO support services. So I would like to see some technical and practical hints about how to identify potential company having need in project management office. Some secrets.
Absolutely. So, one of the things, David, is like I mentioned earlier, it's the headcount, right? If a company sort of hit that headcount threshold and they don't have a PMO, then you're looking for that. But of course, you go to any organization and you say, by the way, you have 100 people, and you don't have a PMO. You guys are in trouble. Nobody's going to believe you. They'll be like, what are you talking about? So you really need to get down to the kind of pain points that these organizations ultimately end up facing, right? So what are the pain points or the symptoms really that that sort of indicate that project management needs to be rescued, right? So number one, project management is off the charts, totally haywire, lots of chaos. And again, could be different reasons. The reasons could be there's no one there who knows project management. Everybody's an accidental PM, or you have a huge disparity in the experiences of the PMs that are there, or you have PMs of the same caliber, but they're butting heads with each other, right? And there's essentially no one governing them. So that's one. The other one is that you have projects that are just not getting delivered on time, on budget, on scope. You will have situations where projects are not being delivered consistently. Projects aren't being delivered transparently, where the executives are like, what projects? I don't even have a project list. Stakeholders complaining about, I wish I had known this earlier. I wish we had known about this earlier. Basically, is telling you that we wish we had better risk management in place. Our people are overburdened with things. That means there is no resource management, right? So all of these sort of facets come into play, which essentially point you towards elevating project management. And then the question that comes up is, well, do you really need a PMO, or do you really need better project management, or do you really need uh, s- so with better project management, you could either have hire more or better PMs, or just train them. But when you realize that some of these, when you sort of lift the hood and see further, and you realize that there are situations where standards aren't there. There are situations where there needs to be some sort of governance or shepherding, and that it's not the problem just doesn't lie in the execution. Then that a PMO is really needed.
Thank you.
right. And I
So
and I think that I guess piggybacking on this question, um, I work in healthcare, and I noticed that in this industry, I worked with many companies in healthcare. So I noticed across the board, big or small companies we have a lot of project management activities, because most of the research and development segments work are project based companies. Um, but there's no really PMO. There's no PMO setup, and I'm talking about the giants of the pharmaceutical industries, and all the good stuff. So from big to small. So project managers pretty much are just led by executives. There is maybe a one head of the project management department, and then they go into project directors, and they kind of follow a chain that is a bit different from what I think other industries are using. So I was just curious, see, in with working with so many clients from different places, if you see that this is happening maybe in other industries, or is this just a particular case for pharma?
I think that this is really all about, having centralized versus decentralized PMOs, right? And in your case, or rather in the case of the pharma, the example that you gave, um, seems like that they're in the companies perhaps that you've been working with, because I have also seen and worked with some pharma companies, and they do have PMOs, right?
Okay.
So I guess in the companies that you've interacted with, or generally that you have seen, you know, they don't want to recognize project management or PMO as an entity, even though the hierarchy based on what you just said, such as head of project management and the director of project management, etc., are all essentially code words for PMO leaders, right? Um, but they don't want to have a construct that is there for various reasons. Now, the way to and especially in larger organizations, you definitely cannot. It's very difficult to have holistic PMOs, but it's much better to at least have decentralized PMOs, because then certain areas are actually functioning well, and then once those certain areas start functioning well, ultimately, if there is some benefit from that, then you place in an EPMO across all of them, not for all elements of project management, but certain elements of project management, such as focusing on work intake prioritization, such as focusing on how to manage shared resources, whether it's people, whether it's money, whether it's other assets. Um, and uh, but but yeah, I think without having that formalization, um, if people are sort of shying away from it and call not and afraid to call a spade, there's essentially doing their organizations a disservice.
Yeah, I would think so too, especially when then they come in contact with the term of the PMO, and they're unfamiliar as to what it means and what's in it for them to establish one. So yeah. Okay, well, thank you for that. It's good to know that some actually do have it
Mhm.
Yes.
recognized.
When following this small discussion about the healthcare, I remembered one of my consulting assignments. I was delivering with a client with a company operating in a manufacturing sector, and we joined with our the experts and partners to them when they started to implement the ERP without having some procedures, processes well arranged, etc., etc. And they were living in a nightmare. And we started from consulting them on the ERP implementation, then actually and naturally expanded to the PMO, and we have created the board of directors, which was carrying out the similar functions. Uh, so how or what can I use to companies to convince that when is the right time for implementing the software for managing the portfolio, managing the projects, where to start from?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. So I'll sort of take two different aspects of it. Right. So number one, I think that an organization is ready for a another tool or a tool when their current tool is rendering them to be less productive, less effective, less efficient. If you have outgrown your existing tool set, you need to get a better one, right? Whether it's ERP, whether it's project management, whether it's accounting, whatever, you know, CRM, whatever softwares that there are, whatever integrations that happen. That's my fundamental philosophy. If you've outgrown your existing tool set, you go get another one. If you haven't, then focus on making your processes better, making your data more available. Which leads me to my second piece is once you do outgrow your existing tool set and you want a better tool set, you better have the corresponding processes and data ready for use for the new tool. Because if you don't, then your new tool will be a very heavy burden on you. And the case, such as an example like you just suggested, David, if any sort of company that comes in to implement that, then that data is being manufactured and those processes are being manufactured on the fly. And most likely something that is in tune with the tool versus in tune with the organization, which will, in the long run and perhaps even in the short run, impact the organization. So you better have your processes and your data ready before you start focusing on other tools. Now, aside from ERP, when we're focusing on just PMO and PM and PPM tools, with the dramatic improvements of technology, we have so many options out in the market now, especially with the whole cloud computing SaaS concepts, that you can very easily try out certain tools and see whether they're going to fit or not, right? And when it specifically comes to project management tools, I think it's very important to understand which of the project management facets and disciplines are more important to your organization versus not. So, do you really care about managing schedules, or do you care about managing resources, or do you care about managing the budget, or do you really want, really easy plug and play sort of dashboards? What is it? What is it that you are going to weigh more premium on? If you're a small organization and you say, you know what, I want everything, or even if you're a big organization and you say, I want everything to be amazing, but you know that their maturity level is so low right now they can't even do the fundamentals, then they're going to go spend a lot of money on the tool, on the implementation, and guess what, it's just going to be a very very expensive investment with no ROI, right? So when I actually guide organizations from that, based on understanding the roadmap of the PMO and understanding the challenges and understanding the root cause of those challenges, I can weigh in on what the organization really is hinging on right now and what is a nice to have. Because like all project management tools have certain factors that are amazing and some that are not so good. Some might be really good with managing schedules, some might, and they might not even have any sort of risk registers or raid logs built in. For some it might be really easy to create dashboards, but it's a nightmare managing resources. What is it that the company can live with or would rather want right now? That is important for all to agree and then choose a tool accordingly.
What are the must-have tools, if there are any, in setting up a PMO, or that a PMO leader uses? Are there any?
Tool to set up a PMO or tool to manage projects?
Well, I guess both.
Both.
Both?
Both. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
If there are
Well,
any
if you take,
must-have.
so let's answer the tools required to set up a PMO first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you take my course, Setting Up a PMO on LinkedIn Learning, you will have those tools available for you. They
Okay.
are they come in the exercise files, and those are the tools that are necessary for you to identify the right stakeholders within the organization that you want to have as your PMO stakeholders. Those are the tools that will help you figure out the right questions that you should be asking the stakeholders. You will have the tools to figure out how to ask the right questions so that you don't just stop at the symptoms, you get down to the root causes. You will have tools to assess what you have heard and come up with the themes. And then you'll have the tools to present that, get approvals, create a future state, and then build a roadmap for your PMO. So fundamentally, those are the tools that you need as a PMO leader to either set up a PMO, to optimize it, or to resurrect it.
Mhm.
Right? Now, based on the findings that you have here, you will understand where are which disciplines of project management generally are lagging behind. More often than not, more often than not, organizations primarily care about one thing. Let's just get the projects done and
Mhm.
done on time. Now, whether the resources are scrambling around, whether they're spending so much money, whether there's risk issue or not, logs or not, whether there is a dashboard, whatever. They don't really, they may not care, or they may, but mostly they care about getting projects done on time, right? And so, with that said, you need to have some tool that will help you build and manage schedules, right? Now, that could be a SaaS tool, it could be a desktop tool, SaaS tools like Asana, Contata, um, Trello, PlanView, so on and so forth. Desktop tools like Microsoft Project, Excel, Notebook.
Like
I
the
have
actual
seen that. I
pen.
have seen that, my friends. I have seen that.
I mean, I use
Um,
a notebook.
I
Open
like the last
Notepad.
one.
Okay, day, activity, due date, person. Yeah, but um, in contrast, in contrast, it's much better to have Notepad than have it all in my mind. Oh,
Oh
I
yeah.
don't need a schedule. I already know. I already know it. So, yes, those are the situations that also exist. But yeah, schedule management essentially becomes primarily the most important piece. Now, if schedule management is done right, then you will know that schedule management has two key components to it. There is the effort and the duration piece, and then there is the resource piece. Who's going to do the work? Right? And so those two elements lead you to having either proper budget management or proper resource management. But for organizations that are really starting out that may not care about this, or just it's just too much of a jump for them, and they just want to go ahead and get started with managing schedules. Let's just go ahead and put something on paper, put some deadline. Let's just start managing it. Having our you know newly created project management lifecycle. Just have some schedule management tool out there, and then get them going.
Great. So, Hussein, when I'm starting my career in PMO, I'm asking questions to you, what to read, and you recommend a good list of literature trainings. So the beginners and intermediate level managers and PMO leaders ask you to read something, and you offer suggest some source of literature. And what do you read for you to be in the shape? What materials? What sources of, I don't know, scientific or other kind of researches to be in shape, because you are the advanced level compared to some other practitioners. You teach PMO.
Yeah, David, I think that's a great point. You know, uh, generally for project teams, when I go in and I see a lack of something, generally I help them with customized project management workshops. Right, again, focusing on which project management disciplines do they really need to learn about managing schedules. Do they need to learn about how to create rock solid projects. Do we need to teach them on the fundamentals of project, the iron triangle: budget, scope, uh, time with quality in the middle? And really, when you change one, what impact do we have on the other two? Really the basics. In some cases, what is a project and what is not, what is operations, how do you differentiate, um, to advanced, and in some cases then to the advanced stuff, right? Like things like conflict management, influencing, negotiating, managing stress, uh, delivering bad news, storytelling, or even leading effective meetings, right? So when we are doing that analysis and figuring out what the pain points are from a project management perspective, and speaking directly with some of these people, I can tell where they are lagging behind, right? Now, when it comes down to PMO leaders, then over there, I really encourage them to use my framework. It's called the O framework, to understand where they are from those 35 attributes perspective. And I asked them to, out of those 35 attributes, maybe take 3 to 5 attributes that they want to prioritize and create smart goals for themselves, and then I hold them accountable. Now, for instance, over there, you might have communication as a skill that someone wants to develop, whether it's or public speaking or better presentations. And in that case, something like Toastmasters, you know, or if it's around, negotiating conflict management. So then either, I work with them, or there could be some other resources. Of course, and then of course, leaning from other PMO leaders can be very, very helpful. So if it's an organization where there are other PMO leaders, maybe look at them. Maybe point them to a lot of resources that we have. A lot of PMO podcasts, blogs, books out there that people can read and use, right? And so ultimately, you want to make sure that they are developing themselves personally, so that they feel confident and they exude that confidence and the belief in the PMO, so that it becomes contagious within the organization. That's the level that we want to get them to, right? Um, so yeah, and so and especially when they're setting up a PMO, and they don't have much experience, then the coaching behind the scenes that I provide generally helps them, operate at the level where they don't need to go Google at anything. They don't need to go find other things. They can just come reach me for whatever questions they have specifically to the setup of the PMO, not their own personal development, because yes, there are many other ways to also do that, but making sure that they get that level of coaching so that they don't have to go anywhere else, and they are able to be the PMO leader that their organization needs them to be. Because yes, some people in their organization already know they don't have that these guys don't have any project management experience or any PMO leadership experience. Even then, they will assume that as a PMO leader, they are the expert in in PMO leadership, and therefore they are the guides, they are the leaders, they are the ones who will tell the rest of the organization in terms of what needs to be done, right? So that's a massive undertaking, and so making sure that they are very comfortable in their skin is something that make sure that PMO leaders face and don't stumble upon along the way.
Okay, thank you. So now we are near to the end point of our discussion of our discussion of PMO, and maybe one of the last questions from our side, which is about your source of inspiration to be in the field. What,
My source of inspiration, the one, what I do, why I do it, is because of one stat, and that stat is that 50% of PMOs will fail within 3 years of their creation, right? Now, that stat is something that technically may have changed, because that's been there for quite a few years. But given the kind of conversations that I have with a lot of organizations and to be PMO leaders or brand new PMO leaders, I feel like it still may be valid. And those of us who know, it's like saying, "Hey, Hussain, will I'm setting up a PMO, will the PMO succeed? And I can say, you know what, hold on, let me flip a coin. Heads, it's going to succeed. Tails, it's going to fail. And those of us who know the value of a PMO realize that it's far more valuable than the probability of a coin toss, right? So that keeps me going, and I hope that the work, that we're all doing in support of PMO and PMO leaders in the profession can help make a solid dent where PMOs are ultimately recognized as a must-have entity and not just a cost center within the organization.
Okay, thank you.
And to your point, Hussein, I just wanted to. I'm not sure if you saw, but some of the folks in the PMO community have actually started a international PMO day,
Yes,
which
it's
is
a
going to
fantastic
be
initiative.
9 May. Yeah, no, it's one way of recognizing more and more about PMO and maybe changing that percentage, changing that statistic um, in more
Absolutely. One of the things I tell PMO leaders is that they are their PMO CMO. They are their PMO's chief marketing officers. They have to wear the pom poms. They have to celebrate the wins. Sometimes it's good to have the cake and tea parties. Sometimes it's okay to have hallway celebrations where you're putting up posters in terms of the wins that are going on, and sometimes you are showing your repute by being at the strategy table and talking and being the only person or only a few of the few one of the few people who really know what they're doing, right? Because ultimately PMO leaders are at a vantage point that very few leaders within an organization have, because they get to work in conjunction with so many people across the organization, when especially when it comes down to cross collaboration. And so no, it's no wonder that when PMO leaders are successful, a leadership seat is waiting for them at the table.
Yeah, that's a very well said. Well, thank you, Hussein, and thank you, David. Thank you, Hussein, for first of all for accepting our invitation, for coming here, for treating us with your advice, and telling us that now we're going to do and start a company.
So
David is David is set to setting up a PMO. It seems.
Yes, he is.
actually, the book and beyond is the right place to grow as a PMO leader. And now we can say that the next brick is on the wall of the PMO world. We are making great community. Thank you for your huge impact you bring to our community, to our family, with your expertise and with your fantastic experience and reactions to our questions. We are growing and we're making the PMO world better. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much, both of you. You guys are doing a great job. Really, really good work on Books and Beyond. Really great work by the PMO leader team, and I really appreciate you guys inviting me over, and I had a lot of fun, and I hope we can do it again.
Well,
Thank you very
definitely.
much.
And also, don't forget that we have another global conference this year. It's still in October, so more
Mhm.
details to come around that. But definitely, we would definitely like to see you there. And until then, we'll be in touch. Recording will be available as usual for all the folks out there who are members of the PMO Leader. We'll put it on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and all the social media channels. And yeah, we'll be seeing you guys next month, 24th of April, I believe. We have another episode number 14. Special guests. We won't reveal them now, sooner, closer to the date. But yeah, in closing, Hussein, have a wonderful rest of your day. David, you as well. I'll meet you afterwards to put the business plan together.
Thank you all. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye
Bye bye.
bye.